Welcome to the Land Your Bet Sports Betting Show. Monday Night Football here. Got the Chargers hosting the Ravens in LA. This is going to be a good one. Two second-place teams in their division. Also got a 51.5 point total, so we should be expecting some points. I've got 7 player prop projections for this game. Some best bets that I'm looking at for you as well. If that all sounds good, go ahead and like that video. Let's get right into it. Kicking it off with the Ravens offense, one of the best in the league, as we know, top 5 for sure. And we can talk about them through the level of running or passing at this point because they're tops in EPA in both of them. 3rd in yards for passing, 2nd in rush yards, 1st in pass EPA, 3rd in rush EPA. And they've got the number 1 best adjusted yards before contact. So their offensive line is the real deal. It's getting that push. It's surpassed the Lions even, who have been the most impressive team so far. I would say with the O-line, the Ravens are right up there with them at this point. And I do think they're going to have a lot of success running the ball, despite the fact that this defense for the Chargers is as nasty as it is. Top 5 in EPA per play for this defense, 12th in passing yards, 11th in rushing yards, and basically the same in terms of the expected play points added per play, which is the EPA that you would expect from both pass and rush, both really, really good. The thing about their pressure percentages, they don't get to the quarterback, right? They get a lot of push in the run game, and they do get into the backfield a bit more with their rush defense. But the rush for the defensive line against the pass doesn't really do much. There's not much of a pass rush. They're only 27th in pressure percentage on the opposing quarterback. While the Ravens don't have the best pass blocking, and they do allow a bit of pressure on Lamar welcomes that pressure because that just gets him out of the pocket. But what's interesting for this Chargers defense is despite not getting to the quarterback on the pass rush, they still allow the 10th most rushing yards to the quarterback position, something we're going to take a little bit of a look at here in a sec. On the other side of the ball, we know what we're going to get here with this Ravens defense. Dead last in passing yards allowed, 28th in pass EPA, and then the complete inverse when it comes to their rush defense. 2nd in rushing yards, 2nd in rush EPA, a defense that's getting the 5th best push against the run, 5th best in adjusted yards before contact, but not the most pressure, similar to the Chargers, only 19th in pressure percentage on the opposing quarterback. Basically, the Ravens just stay home on defense and the defensive line. They're just waiting to tackle the runner in their backfield, or at least at the line of scrimmage, where they've had a lot of success, obviously, against the rush. For this Chargers offense, we've seen them up their pass game a ton in the last 5 or 6 games. To start the season, this was a team that ran the ball 53% of the time, which was 2nd most in the league. Now they've gone down a bunch. They've been at about 55% in terms of their pass to run percentage over the course of the last 5 or 6 games. I don't think that they're necessarily changing who they are. I think Justin Herbert got healthy, and as a result, Harbaugh felt comfortable slinging the ball a bit more with Herbert. You've also got the fact that they've gotten some receivers healthy. McConkey's been back for a bunch of games. Quenton Johnson has been back for the last 6 or 7 games. So they've had a lot more targets. Plus Herbert has gotten along with Will Dissly, the tight end, a ton as well too. So I think you're going to continue to see the pass game, especially in this one, be the thing that prevails way better than the run game for the Chargers. As we jump into Lamar Jackson, quick reminder that we do have the WAP.com account so you can get into the VIP Discord. Link is in the description of the video. Don't miss any of the bets I'm playing. Right now, really nice in the NBA, up almost 15 units through the first 3 weeks of the season. In the NFL, still just got above 500 recently. Nice plus 3 units now. So we're going to close the season hot in the NFL and keep it going. But definitely jump in the link in the description if you don't want to miss any of those plays. And looking at Lamar, my favorite play here is longest rush. And I've kind of been fading or at least staying away from the rushing yards for Lamar in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And he's gone under in the rushing yards twice. Now we've got about a 44.5 yard rush total for his prop. I don't mind going over that, but I do think he's going to have a ton of success, at least on big chunks of yardage in the run game for him. And those might not even come on designed run plays, if we're being honest. That's another reason why I don't mind going with his rushing yards in this one, as opposed to fading them as of late, is because I don't think they're going to continue to sort of script run plays for Lamar. They don't want him to get hurt. They've made that obvious. So they're going to be looking to pass with him and run with Derrick Henry, obviously a lot more. Thing is this Chargers defense, despite not getting any pressure on the quarterback, still gives up a ton of rush yards because there's a lot of green in front of that guy, in front of the quarterback normally. So you look at who has done the rushing from quarterback against them. Kyler Murray is really the only guy who is a rushing quarterback. Everybody else is more just a sometimes athletic guy like Bo Nix. You had Joe Burrow get 28 rushing yards and go over the longest rush. You had Pat Mahomes do the same, Jameis Winston even. So a lot of these guys are getting long runs against this team because they drop their safeties and play a lot of high safety. And then there's a lot of green. Once the quarterback is sitting back there with a lot of time to throw and no pass rush coming his way, if he doesn't have it because the defensive secondary is doing so well, which they've done really well this whole season, then he's going to have a lot of room in front of him as his receivers go down the field and those cornerbacks and safeties go with them, right? So I think we'll see that once again here for Lamar, that he's going to have a ton of green in front of him if he sits in the pocket and doesn't have any passing, and he's just going to take off and get at least 15 yards on one of these runs. So what about Derrick Henry? Unfortunately for you guys, I guess, I don't really have a bet for Derrick Henry. He's at about 88.5 rushing yards on this total. And this is something he did super well earlier in the season. And it's not been bad as of late, but he's been a little bit less necessary, I guess we'll call him. Less than 73 yards or 73 or less in 3 of his last 4 games. The thing is, the Chargers don't stack the box. So I've got reasoning on both sides of this bet, which is the main reason I'm staying away from it. Because if you look at the Chargers, and that's the other reason I love what they do, I love Lamar's longest rush here, is the Chargers do not stack the box. They have the highest percentage in the league of plays on defense where they're running what's called a light box. So they only have 6 guys at the most in the box up on the line of scrimmage. Everybody else, as I mentioned, playing a lot of safeties and playing a lot of high cover schemes, which means the safeties and the cornerbacks are dropping back pretty far. And at the same time, their rush defense is so good, right? So I do think Lamar is great for the rushing. I don't think Derrick Henry is worth fading, but I can't back him in this situation when you've got a really good rush defense that's going to probably be focused on him and might even bring a few more guys into the box than we've seen so far this season. Not Zay Flowers, not Deontay Johnson. I'm going with Rashad Bateman, and he's got a really beatable number for somebody who should have done this for 6 games in a row, which I'll talk about here. But the really interesting thing that we found is the Chargers are the second worst defense against the number 2 wide receiver. So they are not defending the secondary wide receiver nearly as well as the first one. And that's where Rashad Bateman is playing, is on the outside, on the other side from Deontay Johnson a lot at this point, but Deontay and Zay Flowers are in the slot a bit more. You've got Bateman on the outside, and he's the deep threat for the Ravens against a team that's not only bad against the secondary wide receiver, but they're also bad when you go deep for some reason, to be honest, because they try to cover that play. But they are 31st in pass EPA per play on throws of 20 plus yards or more. So if you get a deep target against them, you're going up against a defense that's not good at limiting it. So I'm going to take Bateman to get 2 receptions. I think gets him to the 40 yards in this one. Might as well get it in one play. But either way, I think he's good for about 3 catches. He would have gone over this in 6 straight. However, he dropped 2 balls in 2 games that would have given him his yardage, 2 deep balls. So we're not going to bank on him dropping enough in this game to go under the yards. I would take him on over at about 40 plus. Before you change the channel, because I'm bringing up Justin Tucker, who has been notoriously bad this season, still got a shot here. I think he only needs 2 field goals against a really good red zone defense. So I like him to get his kicking points here, get to 8 or so. I think you can play this to 9. I think we're getting 3 touchdowns from the Ravens, and then he's going to need 2 field goals, and boom, we're good to go, right? And we get to the 9 points that way. So I think that's going to be the case. He's had at least 2 field goal attempts in 8 of 11 games this season. He's just missed more than we've ever expected him to do, and he's going to be in decently nice weather in LA. I can tell you the West Coast is totally fine right now. Sun is shining during the day. Shouldn't have too much rain either for another couple weeks in Cali. So this should be a nice weather game for Tucker. And like I said, if you look at that defense for the Chargers, second best limiting touchdowns once teams get inside the red zone against them. Really good percentage. So I think if that continues at all, which I do think it will, we should be getting a couple field goals here from Tucker to get us over the kicking points. On the other side of the ball here, we've got Justin Herbert, and I'm liking his passing yards. And I hinted towards that at the beginning of the show here, mentioning that this team has been throwing a ton more. And you can see that there in the third bar, over in 4 of his last 5. And in those 5, the Chargers have a 55% pass rate. So they are passing way, way more. Complete swap of what they were doing at the beginning of the season when they were running about 54% of the time. I love a high total, and I love the fact that you have to pass against the Ravens. Not only have you probably given up points to the Ravens offense, but you've also found out pretty quick it's not easy to run against them, and that you should probably start throwing. So I think with the high total where it is, I think Herbert's probably good for the TDs, over 1.5. But the yards are just something I can't stay away from. I mean, 7 of 10 quarterbacks this season have gotten at least 250 yards versus the Ravens. 2 of those, Josh Allen, that was an awful game. That game was over by the second quarter, and there wasn't much for him to even do. I believe he came out at one point in that game for Mitch Trubisky because it was so out of hand. And then the other game was Russell Wilson as well. That was the only one that I give stock to, where Russ was in there, one of his first games as the quarterback for the Steelers. Not really worried about that. And so either way, really likely that quarterbacks are getting 250 plus against him. And I like his TDs as well, to be honest. 2+ TDs in 3 of his last 4, 7 total in that time span without an INT. I think he's still good for that type of production here. But I'd love the yards more than anything. So I'm going to take him at about over 255.5 in this one. So who's he going to be thrown to? Everybody loves the lad. Oh boy, Lad McConkey. He's questionable right now. So I already like huge whether or not Lad McConkey plays, to be honest. But obviously if Lad's out, we've got even more of the pass attempts probably going to Quenton Johnson, who's become a really nice receiver for Herbert. You're talking about the Ravens, worst pass defense in the league. We know that. And they're worst on the outside, actually worse than they are on the corner, the nickel there. And if you look at the corner that's been getting worked for the Ravens, not really because it's his fault, honestly. Brandon Stevenson, like he's just getting a ton of targets. It's because the Ravens are usually winning, so the other team is throwing against them, and they're throwing to the outside, and he is the weakest. He's given up about a 14.4 yard average depth of target and average amount of yards that he's giving per reception, also in the bottom 95th percentile of the league. Easy for me to say. So we've got a really big, good wide receiver playing on the outside, running 95% of the routes that he can on these passing plays with a nice A-dot himself, 13.3 yards. That's the average distance that he's running before he gets targeted by Justin Herbert. So he's good for the yards, way more than the receptions. I think he's going to be good for a lot of yards in this one. And like I'm saying here, he's Herbert's favorite target. That's his boo right now. 131 QBR for Herbert when he throws to Huge this season. So that's second best of any QB wide receiver combo. I think it continues to grow and get better. So we'll see Huge get probably about 60 plus receiving yards in this one. We go to the backfield here for the Chargers. Dobbins or Edwards? Which one are you going with? Neither is always an option because we've got a really good run game here. And I don't think Dobbins is going to be good for his 55-yard rushing prop that we have up. And I don't see an advantage to either of them getting more carries because Harbaugh wants to sort of give it the revenge narrative to one of his running backs and be like, hey, go beat up on your old team. They both play for the Ravens. So it's not like there's a revenge narrative more for one than the other, if we're being honest. And Edwards is the one that I would be looking at for a tutty. That's the only play that I would probably have here for a running back for either of these two, is that Edwards' touchdown is at about 4-1. And that's just too high for somebody who, as recently as 2 weeks ago, was the clear-cut red zone back. Led the team in red zone carries just 2 weeks ago. Last week, not as much. Didn't see much of the field. But it's really a back-and-forth affair here. Neither of them might get in the end zone, honestly. But if one is going to, I'd rather have the one that's at 4-1 versus not nearly as good of a price for Dobbins. So I think that's gone too far here in terms of leaning towards Dobbins being the favorite running back inside the red zone and inside the goal line carries. If Edwards is in there at all, he's going to get at least 1, maybe 2 of those red zone carries in this one. So I like him to get the tutty at 4-1, just based on the juice alone. One final reminder, got outlier.bet. Link is in the description of the video. It is the top software that I'm using to go ahead and find the best bets that I make each day. I use it on the live show every day, 5:30 p.m. Eastern on the YouTube channel, sharing my screen, showing you guys exactly how to use this tool to find the best value that you can. If you want to check it out, use the link in the description of the video for 7 free days. I'm going to be back with that live show, 5:30 p.m. Eastern on Monday, as we do each and every weekday. So you guys come in there with your bets. We go through that stuff together and find some really nice winners for that night's game. So hopefully to see you guys tomorrow. And until then, happy betting.